Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So the Prime Minister of Singapore is speaking right now as I record this. He's already given a speech in Malay and in Mandarin, and now he's doing it. Okay, so that video is already obsolete because he finished his speech and he just declared that they're going to repeal 377A. I was saying in the video, get ready, he's going to repeal the 377A in Singapore, but I thought it was going to be later. I didn't think it was going to be now, because he had earlier talked about how delicate it was and how they were going to have to do this and approach this matter with a great deal of tact and carefully and all that kind of stuff. And then he just drops the hammer. It wasn't particularly delicate. He just takes it upon himself. We're going to repeal 377A because I've just decided. Obviously, this is a huge mistake for Singapore. But Singapore has to do what their benefactors tell them to do. This is the problem when you have a country that has no resources. You are inevitably the servant of many masters. You're not independent. I mean, Singapore's Independence Day is a day on which they inevitably and unavoidably entered into servitude to multiple masters, mostly Western. So they have to do this. If there was a consensus in the population, as he said there was, then this is something that you could pass through the parliament. But they can't, because there isn't actually majority support for this, for repeal of 377A. But anyway, they're doing it, and it's a mistake. And so I would like to just warn and caution in Malaysia that the idea of this is one of the functions of Singapore in this region is to present a Western face in Nusantara, in this region, to contrast it with conservative Muslim countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei, to make these countries, the Muslim countries, look backwards and look regressive, unadvanced and unsophisticated and undeveloped and so on. That's one of their functions. And to create a tension between what the government accepts and what religion prohibits. They want to create a tension between those two things so that people will incline towards whatever there appears to be a consensus of power to be okay, especially young people. They'll just go along with it because it's the thing to do. In my opinion, repealing 377A in Singapore is against Singapore's own constitution, which requires them to uphold, promote, safeguard, and protect the culture, religious rights, and interests of the Malays, the indigenous population. This certainly doesn't do that. But anyway, they've done what they've done. So now it's upon Malaysia and Indonesia and Brunei to ensure that the same thing doesn't get repeated in our Muslim countries. In my opinion, the conservative voices in Singapore were too complacent, were too inactive, and believed that 377A would never be repealed. I have said before that was naive. And there have been many signs leading up to this that indicated that the government was now preparing to repeal 377A. For example, when they said that the government had met with unnamed religious leaders who said that they were fine with repeal. I don't know who they talked to, but that certainly isn't actually the consensus of religious groups in Singapore, but whatever. Anyway, again, they've done what they've done. It's a huge mistake for Singapore. I mean, they talked about 377A in Singapore being what they called gatekeeper law. They said they weren't going to enforce it, but we need to keep it on the books, basically so that we don't normalize homosexuality. And this is true. You're normalizing it now. And once you've normalized it, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. It's going to proceed the same way that it has proceeded in every other country that has followed this path, which is into chaos. But they have to make their decisions based on what their Western international benefactors approve. Malaysia doesn't have to do that. Indonesia doesn't have to do that. Brunei doesn't have to do that. So I really hope that inshallah in Malaysia and in Indonesia and in Brunei, they can stand up for what's morally correct and what is in the best interests of their public health, in the best interests of their societies, and resist what will inevitably be a considerable amount of pressure for them to also decriminalize gay sex. Jazakumullahu khairan wa assalamu alaikum.